Everyone, why was everyone able to be so productive tonight?
Well, obviously.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video, this time on the Saints. A lot of you guys asked this in my last video, so be sure to comment down below which team you want to see next, and I hope you guys enjoy. One last thing, 92% of you guys are still not subscribed to the channel. Please consider subscribing, it's free and it really helps support the channel. But without further ado, let's get straight to this video. After winning the Super Bowl in 2009, the Saints team struggled to reach the big stage again, losing in 2010 to the Seahawks in the wildcard round, and in 2011 to the 49ers in the Divisional. In 2012, partly because of Bountygate, the Saints failed to qualify for the playoffs with a 7-9 record. In 2013, the Saints managed to regain some momentum, going 11-5, but once again lost in the Divisional, this time to the Seahawks.
With the 20th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Brandon Cooks, wide receiver, Oregon State.
Last season, the Saints decided to move on from Darren Sproles, removing the Saints' primary running back and a large part of their offense. In order to fill this hole, the Saints decided to trade up to the first round and draft Brandon Cooks. Cooks, along with Marcus Colson and Jimmy Graham, created a dangerous offensive unit for Brees to take advantage of. On the defensive side, last season, the Saints hired defensive coordinator Rob Ryan, who had drastically improved the defense to one of the best in the league. Ryan attempted to further build his defense by signing safety Jairus Byrd to a massive 6-year, $56 million contract. Overall, after all these additions, it seemed that the Saints were ready for another Super Bowl run. Despite expectations for the Saints to dominate, they struggled in their first few games, going 2-4 before they managed to regain some momentum midway through the season. Despite this momentum, they still ended up with a 7-9 record, failing to qualify for the playoffs. Throughout the season, the Saints' biggest struggle was their defense, which had gone from one of the league's best to one of the worst. During the season, the Saints lost 2 games in overtime and another 3 by only 1 score, ultimately because of this terrible defensive unit.
There's no Megatron in the red zone to throw it up to, so how about Corey Fuller?
Oh, look at that right there.
The 13th pick in the 2015 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Andress Peat, tackle, Stanford.
After their disappointing 2014 season, the Saints made a shocking move, trading away their best receiver in Jimmy Graham for center Max Unger. This trade, along with drafting Andress Peat in the first round, showed the Saints' effort to improve Brees' protection, who was constantly being sacked last season and increasing the odds of him being injured. The biggest change, however, came from the Saints' defense, which drastically needed changes. The Saints' defense, which had gone from one of the league's best to one of the worst, desperately needed help, and the Saints addressed this by drafting and signing a ton of new defensive players. Because of this high turnover, no one was entirely sure on how this new Saints defense would end up performing, and just how far this new Saints team could go. The Saints once again struggled at the beginning of the season, starting off a brutal 1-4. They got a brief boost after pulling off a huge upset victory over the undefeated Falcons, spurring a 3-game winning streak which was brutally ended with huge losses to the Titans, Redskins, and Texans. Despite another late season surge, the Saints failed to qualify for the playoffs, ending once again with a 7-9 record. Once again, the Saints' defense was terrible, and actually set an all-time record for most passing touchdowns allowed in a season with 45.
And it is caught on the run. CJ Spinner, and Spinner's going to go all the way to end the game.
NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Michael Thomas, wide receiver, Ohio State.
The Saints' offense last season was not as big as a problem as their defense, but they still wanted to improve Brees' offensive options, especially with the loss of Ben Watson and Marcus Colston. To address this, they signed tight end Kobe Fleener and drafted rookie receiver Michael Thomas. But their biggest problem was still on the defensive end, which had given up 29.8 points per game last season. The defense needed major changes, but the Saints had very little cap, forcing them to settle for Nick Fairley as their only major defensive signing, and instead mostly drafted young defensive players to help out. Despite these changes, expectations were still low for the Saints team. With an unwinnable defense and an aging Drew Brees, it seemed as if the Saints were nearing a rebuild era. The 2016 Saints season was one of the craziest in recent history, and being a Saints fan must have meant a constant string of heart attacks. The Saints started the season off 4-4, with 6 of those games being decided by less than 6 points. These close matchups continued to the second half of the season, where the Saints went 3-5, with 4 of those losses being determined by less than 6 points as well. Overall, the Saints ended with a 7-9 record, failing to qualify for the playoffs. But even though they ultimately failed, the future still looked bright, with a 38-year-old Drew Brees showing no signs of slowing down, and a rookie Michael Thomas emerging as an incredible receiver.
Brees hesitates for Michael Thomas, and it's trouble. He caught it, and he fell in the end zone for a touchdown, Saints!
The New Orleans select Marshawn Lattimore, defensive back, Ohio State.
During the offseason, the Saints decided to trade away their #1 receiver Brandon Cooks, allowing Michael Thomas to step up as the primary receiver on offense. The Saints also signed veteran Adrian Peterson and drafted Alvin Kamara to work alongside Mark Ingram and add even more depth to the run game. But once again, the Saints desperately needed defensive players. For the last few seasons, the Saints' signings and picks had all failed to make a major impact defensively. The Saints attempted to fix this by drafting Marshawn Lattimore in the first round, who had slipped much farther than everyone had expected, and signing minor free agents in Alex Okafor, Manti Te'o, and AJ Klein. Once again, the Saints' season rested on how well this defensive unit could perform in big games. The season started off with much of the same, with 2 losses to the Vikings and Patriots in which the defense severely underperformed. But then, suddenly in week 3, the Saints began to dominate as the Saints secondary with Marshawn Lattimore, Ken Crawley, Marcus Williams, and Von Bell emerged as a lockdown force. The Saints went on an 8-game winning streak and ended the season with an 11-5 record, qualifying for a wildcard spot. In a wildcard matchup against the Panthers, the Saints burst out to an early lead which the Panthers struggled to cut down on. With only 5 minutes to go, the Saints held a dominant 31-19 lead. But after a quick McCaffrey touchdown and a failed 4th down conversion, the Panthers had the ball back down by 5 on the Saints' 21-yard line with less than a minute remaining. In the past few seasons, it was situations like this in which the Saints team struggled, with their defense failing to make the game-winning stop. But this time, after incredible plays from Marshawn Lattimore, Cameron Jordan, and Von Bell, the Saints were able to force a turnover on downs and win the game.
Blitz, a sack, Saints win.
The Saints' divisional matchup against the Vikings was one of the best games in recent history. In the first half, the Saints struggled, allowing the Vikings to jump out to a 17-0 lead. The Saints managed to lead a comeback late in the game to take a 21-20 lead.
This is caught for the touchdown!
Before the Vikings responded with a 53-yard field goal to retake the lead with less than 2 minutes remaining.
Got it!
Brees then led an amazing drive down to score a field goal in only 64 seconds.
Brees, pass, caught, Snead! Lutz drove it! And the Saints...
With 25 seconds remaining and the Vikings down by 1, this happened.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport, defensive end, Texas San Antonio.
During the offseason, the Saints didn't really have any major areas to improve on, so they settled with adding a little more depth for each of their positions, signing Tre'Quan Smith and Ben Watson to add a little more fire to the offense, and drafting Marcus Davenport to further improve their defense. Overall, it seemed that the Saints were primed for another deep playoff run. The 2018 season started with an upset loss to the Bucs, but then the Saints team began to mesh as they went on a 10-game winning streak behind incredible performances from their offense, which was ranked number 3 in scoring, and their rush defense was shot up to number 2 in the league in rushing yards allowed, leading the Saints to a 13-3 record straight into the Divisional. In the Divisional matchup against the Eagles, the Saints had a terrible start to the game, with Brees throwing a pick on the opening play and the Saints having to punt the ball in the next possession. The Eagles took a 14-0 lead without the Saints gaining a single yard. But for the rest of the game, the Saints defense stepped up and managed to hold the Eagles scoreless as Brees led the Saints to a 6-point lead. With 3 minutes remaining, the Eagles had the ball and the opportunity to win the game with a touchdown. Once again, in the past, situations like this meant the end of the Saints, whose defense was simply unable to make big stops. But now, with their upgraded defense, Marshawn Lattimore was able to make the big final game-winning pick to advance the Saints to the next round.
Throws, intercepted, went right through Jeffrey's hands. It's Lattimore.
In the NFC matchup against the Rams, the Saints suffered from one of the worst missed calls in sports history. The game was close throughout most of the game, but with less than 2 minutes remaining and the score tied at 20 apiece, this obvious pass interference call was missed.
Pass is incomplete, no flag for Tommy Lee Lewis.
After this missed call, the game went into overtime, where the Rams were able to win the game and eliminate the Saints.
Rams win it, and on to Super Bowl 53 they go.
With the 48th pick in the 2019 draft, the New Orleans Saints select Eric.
Last season, the Saints were dominant and only one missed call away from the Super Bowl, and the team remained largely the same. Their only major losses were Mark Ingram, whose departure allowed Alvin Kamara to take an even larger role in the rushing game, and Max Unger, who unexpectedly retired and was replaced with Eric McCoy. Other than that, the team looked the same, and barring any missed calls, primed for another Super Bowl. The Saints started the season 1-1 before Brees was sidelined with an elbow injury, forcing backup Teddy Bridgewater to step up. From weeks 3 to 7, Bridgewater dominated, going 5-0 before Brees returned and continued the dominance, all the way to a 13-3 record.
Let's go. Dixon's punt travels to the 47, and Harris with a little wiggle, and there he goes! Deontay Harris gonna take it the distance!
In a wildcard rematch against the Vikings, the Saints were down by 10 entering into the fourth quarter. Largely because of their defense, the Saints were able to tie the game late in the fourth quarter to send the game into overtime. In overtime, the Vikings got the opening kickoff and proceeded to drive 75 yards in 9 plays for the shocking game-winning score.
Cousins throws, pass is caught for the win. Kyle Rudolph.
The New Orleans Saints select Cesar Ruiz, center, Michigan.
So there.
The Saints still look strong heading into 2020, with Brees agreeing to play at least one more year and Michael Thomas fresh off his Offensive Player of the Year season, where he set the NFL record for most receptions in a single season, with 149. But time is clicking for the Saints, who need to find their way to the Super Bowl soon before their aging team becomes too old to be competitive. The Saints once again got off to a slow start before they rallied, and at the time of making this video are on a 7-game winning streak, including a dominant 38-3 victory over the Bucs. The Saints did lose Drew Brees to a rib injury midway through the season, but it seems that he will be ready in time for the playoffs as the Saints attempt to avoid the bad luck and finally make it back to the Super Bowl. Overall, it was the Saints defense that held them back for years, and when they finally did get a competitive defense, they were held back by unlucky games and calls. That's going to be all for this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.